For my research project, I chose to look at the effect of cable news coverage on mass shootings in America. So, it has been found that the ways in which big networks such as CNN and Fox News report on mass shootings can actually cause more to happen, in a sense, a copycat effect. And this is known as the mass shooting contagion, and I have a video that just demonstrates that.
You can catch a disease if it's contagious, but surprisingly, you can catch a behavior too. Suicides, 91, the rates of murder, robbery, rape, and assault are all down. In fact, these crimes are lower today than at any time in the last 50 years. The number of mass shootings, however, has sharply increased since the year 2000, according to the FBI. There are now an average of around 16 mass shootings a year in the U.S., or perhaps as many as one every 12 and a half days, depending on how you count them. Using this data, a paper in PLOS One found on average, one school shooting inspires 0.22 more school shootings, and a mass shooting inspires 0.3 more mass shootings, peaking every 13 days. Mathematically, if you have 4 mass shootings in a short period, chances are one of those was inspired by one of the others. When shootings include more than 3 people, it was more sensational and then had increased media coverage and could then be considered a contagious behavior. Combating the negativity of contagious behavior may be as simple as holding each other accountable for our actions before we get there, being open, clear, and honest about our negative effects. For example, after Kurt Cobain's suicide in 1991, the media focused on the effects on his surviving family and the sadness of his friends and fans, lowering the suicide rate in the US. This was really shocking, but it actually makes a lot of sense. A positive behavioral contagion beat a negative one. Health researchers have looked at this for a while, and they studied peers' positive motivation being contagious in exercise and healthy habits. Perhaps these darker behaviors are susceptible to that as well. There hasn't been a ton of research on gun violence in the United States, in part because Congress banned federal funding for gun violence research in '97. However, if more research can uncover how violent behavior like suicide and mass killing is contagious, the implications are huge. And as usual, more research is definitely needed. One of my
So, based on the research that I have done, I propose that cable news networks must change the information and methods in which they report on mass shootings in order to prevent this copycat effect. So before we're even able to get into the copycat effect and what causes it and what can be done to prevent it, we must understand what a mass shooting is. So the Gun Violence Archive defines a mass shooting as any incident with a shooter in which 4 or more people are shot, not including the shooter. So in 2019, there was 419 mass shootings in America, which is the most that there have ever been. And it just really shows the serious issue that America is facing with this. As you can see by this is America compared to other nations and how many shootings. So this was from 1966 to 2012, and it is clear that US just far leads these countries in the amount of mass shootings that are committed. And then these are the deadliest mass shootings in the US, and it's just awful to see these events and how they impact our country. So we also must look at how the media represents these shootings, and there are many, many issues with this. One of the issues of the media and how they portray mass shootings is that they want to be the first ones on the story. So they will take information and immediately report it without fact-checking, and this can have serious effects. At the Sandy Hook Elementary shooting, they actually misidentified the shooter as his brother. So this clearly has negative effects on the family and the brother especially. And another issue, the biggest one, and you can see it in this photo, is on newspapers and cable as well. The shooter's face is always on the front page. You see their name, you see their face, adjectives and other things that just really put them in the forefront instead of other people, such as the victims or even first responders. And we'll get into it on how this can have serious effects. So it has been found that many shooters have what is called fame-seeking behavior. So there are 4 major criteria that define what fame-seeking behavior is. So one of them is discussing fame to friends, families, coworkers, anyone really who will listen. The second one is seeking media attention and having this desire to be seen by the news. The third one is posting about committing a shooting prior, or even some shooters have live streamed their crimes. And then the fourth one is looking up to other violent figures, such as, it can be a real one, such as a previous shooter, or even a fictional one, like a serial killer in a movie or something. And it was found in a sampling of 263 mass shooters that 41 of them had fit some form of this criteria. And this was only just a small number. There have been clearly many more mass shootings since this was taken. So, yeah. And some of the proposed solutions is, well, the main one is the no notoriety movement, which is basically just saying, like, keep the perpetrator's name out of their face, keep the perpetrator's name out of the news, and don't give them that attention that they desire. So basically it includes limiting the use of the perpetrator's name and their face, avoiding using videos and images from the scene of the crime in the news, and not publishing their works, like a manifesto or something like that. So this is really just all about putting more emphasis on the victims and survivors and first responders of the crime. So there are 2 major arguments against the no notoriety movement and changing media methods. So the first one is that many journalists claim that the First Amendment actually protects their methods. And this is pretty much true. They do have the right to press and to free speech, but there are many other ways in which they can portray these stories. So using the First Amendment as a defense isn't exactly the best, in my opinion. And then the second one, which is definitely the more significant one, is ratings. The CNN and Fox News and MSNBC they're companies, and they're looking to increase their revenue. And this is by viewership and by good ratings. So they use whatever will get the most views. At the Virginia Tech shooting, CNN that day went from having 450,000 viewers to 1.2 million, and Fox's viewers also doubled. So this is reasonable to assume that the way that they portrayed this event subsequently caused more viewership. However, it was found in a study that people will still view the news on these events, regardless of whether or not they show the perpetrator and all of this stuff and follow the no notoriety campaign. And 70% of respondents from a survey actually thought that the media coverage on mass shootings is way too excessive and it needs to be toned down. So why is this all so important? Well, we get all of our information from the news. I think even now, definitely we can see how the news is impacting our country. There's panic everywhere based on media coverage of the virus, and I think that this connects very well to the issue of mass shootings. We have seen these images far too often of victims, vigils, and just mourning. And if the media decides to change the way in which they choose to present these events, then we will see less of this. Thank you.